So welcome to another wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today I'm taking a look at Keep Up the Fire, which is the Boxer Rebellion from Worthington Games. So this is one of their States of Siege games. If you don't know, Worthington's been buying up, not all, but as many as they can get a hold of the old States of Siege games, which were put out by Victory Point Games, and they've been kind of deluxifying them. So you get them in a bigger box. There's kind of a custom counter tray in it for all the cards and game pieces and stuff like that. And it's a nice board. They've redone the cards, redone the artwork, and just given everything kind of a facelift as well. But these are it's a solitaire game. If you've played States of Siege, you basically know at least the core of what you're getting yourself into in this one. And this game covers, like I said, the Boxer Rebellion. And I'm not going to pretend to be any kind of expert on that part of history, but this is a good game to learn about some of that history. Now, is this going to be a substitute for reading a book? I don't know, maybe not. But as you play through the cards have events on them with names that give you a hint of what's going on, and at the bottom of each of the cards, it'll have like a date and then a description of that particular event or that course of what happened during this particular engagement during this siege. And so you're going to pick up and learn some of the things that are going on, but basically you're playing as the defenders of Fort Halliday in Peking, I believe, and the defenders in this instance it's referred to like it's the 8-nation army, the 8-nation force, and so you have this multinational force of Austrians, Japanese, Americans, Germans, Italians, United States, France, Russia, and the United Kingdom. I probably said someone twice there. But that's who... So, and each one of those nations has a single counter, and, there's 2 spots on each of the 4 walls, and so you can move your guys around because each of them have different abilities, some of them good, some of them punitive, and you're defending against these oncoming waves of assault troops, either from the king or the Boxers, and during this siege that's going on. And all the while, whilst you're trying to defend in a very States of Siege kind of way, there's this separate relief column that you have to go through as well. You have to get your relieving force to Fort Halliday, and if you don't, it doesn't matter if your defenders survive. They're never relieved, and so they basically surrender at the end, and you still lose that way. So not only do you have to kind of play a regular States of Siege game, but you also have this sideboard that you're trying to work on, and that's something that is a little bit different in this one from some of the other titles that I've played as well. One of the things I really enjoyed about this, not only was it a good learning experience, but I love the art direction that they've taken in this. I think that the box art's great, and it does come with a sleeve, which is also super nice as well, with period pieces on it. But everything on this has been given a great facelift. It looks fantastic. The pieces are well done. And because the board's a little bit bigger than some of the old ones that were little fold-out paper ones, you've got much larger spaces for holding boxes, sequence of play, little kind of play 80 type things printed on the map, which is perfect for a small solitaire game as well. And they give you a they've started doing this. They give you this record book where you can recount your game outcomes, and it's not just like, oh, did I win or did I lose? Like, you can go into how many victory points you got, the level of victory, and then you have this little diagram of what the fort ended up looking like, and how many of your legation forces survived and where they were positioned, which I really think is nice, because the more you play, the more you can, having that extra level of visual comparison between, like, yeah, I had a decisive victory here and a decisive victory here, but, like, how tenuous was this one, or how much, better of a victory was this one? You can really... I don't know, it's nice having a little kind of a log through some of the plays that you do in some of these solitaire games. I think it's nice. What I'll do is I'll show you how this works, and then I'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the board. As you can see, it's what we talked about, these two maps. So you've got kind of a more standard States of Siege map where you've got this central point with all these tracks coming off of it that these enemies are trying to come in. And it's on this background of Fort Halliday and the surrounding walls, which are being besieged by various King or Boxer units who are trying to come in and basically capture the place. You also have this ancillary board over here, which is the relief column map, and you have this 8-nation army relief column that has to make its way through all these spaces into Peking, which is this is Peking with the fort in the middle, and so you've got this extra little part of it as well. It's not just your regular States of Siege game. But if you've never played States of Siege, what you're going to do is you'll have this deck of cards, and in this one it's different as 2, but basically you're going to flip a card, and it's going to tell you to put out extra enemy units if there aren't any on those given tracks. This 3 is the number of actions that you're going to get, and there'll typically be some kind of event or something that you're going to get. And then, in this one at least, at the bottom there is a little description of that specific event with a date on it when it happened and like kind of a bit more of what happened. So it's not just some card effects. It gives you some context and a nice historical photo of what was going on with this particular element of this battle, which I love. And basically what you do is you add the enemies on, take your actions, and then they kind of creep in. And then you're going to go again, take your actions, try to eliminate those or push them back, and then they're going to creep in. And you'll keep going through this deck, and you've got to get through the whole deck to survive. And if you get a bunch of guys in the streets or a single guy in the fort, then it's over. You lose. The siege was successful. They broke in. They stormed, and then everyone was defeated. Not good ending. So again, the big difference with this, and we'll kind of come back to it, is this ancillary board. In almost every other States of Siege game, as long as you can get through the deck and still be kind of intact, so to speak, you'll win the game. That's not the case in this one. It's not enough just to survive, because you have to have the relief column get to Peking as well, because you're under siege. You might outlast everyone, but you're out of supplies, you're out of food, and you'll surrender. You have to have the relief column get there as well to break the siege for you to win. So my first game of this, I think I played, and 5 cards in, they stormed, and I just got overwhelmed because I didn't really know what I was supposed to be doing, and it was awful. The second game, I got all the way through the deck, but couldn't get the relief column there, which was frustrating because I felt like I'd done... you're doing well, things go badly, you're like, okay, and then you're like clawing on to the last minute, but the relief column never came. Which is a great story, and it's interesting to play through, but it really highlighted the real importance of doing the relief column side of it correctly. So, a turn of this is going to look, what you do is you flip 2 cards, one of each deck. You do that first, because some of these might affect each other, some of them don't. And then you kind of look at what's going on. So this turn only, you may decrease the strength of all Boxer units on the map by -1 for 1 action. This is a Boxer unit. You could reduce its strength from a 5 to a 4 for an action. Do I want to do that? I don't know. But, usually you get something, or it might have like a negative thing where, you lose a combat power from one of your defending units around here, or the Imperial Artillery destroys a level of fortification, which this is used as kind of a buffer for your hit points, your CP power. So we've got 3 actions. What we're going to do is, we're going to, not a whole lot, because in this game, you can shoot at extreme and long range in order to kind of pepper these guys and reduce them. You have to roll, and you have to exceed a 5. You have to exceed their strength, and then you roll a casualties die to see how much you reduce it by. I've found I'm not very good at rolling. Total crapshoot, basically. So I'm a person where I'm like, I don't usually do a lot of those unless I've got something like this. The cannon which you get as one of the events, you know, and then maybe you've got one of the ones that's +1 to hit at long range, so if they're in this space, you can do all of that. But for me, I don't do a whole lot. If they're all far away, I'll spend some actions building up my fortifications. That's all 3 actions, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do nothing else, basically. So then every unit on the board moves up, boop, 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 and we were supposed to, and see, this one is blank, we don't add one on this track, and these 3 that I would add already have units on them. Each track can only have 1 unit on, so I didn't do anything there. And that's basically all we're doing there. So the next turn we could shoot at long range if we were so inclined. They're a little bit closer, and we'll kind of maybe see that next time. Alright, what we're going to do then is we kind of move over to this board, and the first thing we do is we're going to draw from this cup that gets units added to it a blocking army for our 8-nation army. And we pulled this guy. It's a mixed force of King of Boxer, and it is a 6. And you kind of you stick it on top to make sure, like, you can't move until you remove the blocking force. And we have 2 actions here, and these actions are very limited on this board. What you can do is you can spend an action to move up your combat power, or you can spend an action to attack this guy, or if you're successful and he's dispersed, you could spend an action to try to advance. And again, both attacking and advancing are extremely punishing. So this counter mix is anywhere from like the lowest one is like a 3 and the highest one is like a 7. But the 3 and the 4 eventually get removed from the game typically. But if you're doing a combat, when you attack, if it's greater than this number, it's a victory and they get dispersed. You don't remove it from the game, it's just dispersed. That allows you to move forward. If it's equal to, nothing happens. Unless you're in one of these red zones, then you take a loss. And a loss is you lose 2 pips, or you lose 1 pip on each combat and speed, or you lose 2 pips on here. Like, it's absolutely brutal. Or if you're defeated, then you take a loss, or if you're in a red zone, you take 2 losses. So you drop like 2 on each track. It just it's awful. You don't do attacks on this unless you're like maxed out, really, because it's so difficult to do those, and it's so punishing when you fail, and you will fail very regularly if you don't have extreme modifiers. So in this instance, I wouldn't even bother trying to roll, because you got to roll more than this. Equal to or greater is not good enough. Greater than is the only thing you're looking for. So I'm just going to spend my 2 actions to move up. I don't really do anything. Great. Then we go to the next round. We're going to flip over 2 cards again, and then we look at our placement. We have a unit on this track. We have a unit on the south track. We're going to go to this west track, and we have to put a red unit. So we put a red unit on there, and it's a strength 5. So we bump that up to a 5. This one says, this turn only, you may add +1 relief column combat power for a -1 CP to any 2 legation forces. Early in the game, you might want to do that, but, you know, I don't know if I'm going to do that. +1 DRM to relief column attack and advance die rolls this turn. Ooh, maybe you do that. Oh, combat powers. Yeah, and we got 3 actions. We probably will do that. So we're going to do -1, -1, and then that's going to give us +1 combat power here. And then we'll kind of translate that a little bit later, because we're going to have 3 actions, so we might move up again, and then attack, and then try to advance. But we do have 3 regular actions on this board. Here we've got +1 to hit at long range, so we'll take a pot shot here. We shouldn't. It's still extremely bad roll, but we'll do it just for fun, just to show you. Oh, I've done it. That's absolutely incredible. 6 + 1 is 7. That's greater than this, so we succeed. So then we roll again to do our casualties. Of course I rolled a 1. Amazing. So this just gets reduced by 1. Good job. I hate that I did that. This guy, we could do it here as well. He's a 5, and we're +1 because of our cannon. So let's go for it. I rolled a 3, 4, so it doesn't hit. It's a miss, and nothing happens. It's unfortunate. We're already maxed out on here. So let's take another pot shot. Do I have anything else at long range? No. We'll just take a pot shot at this guy. See if we can't roll a 6. No, I don't. Okay, cool. Not great. So then we move over to... So then they all move one space. And now all of a sudden, half of these are on the walls, which means they're in melee now. And melee combat is where things get real spicy. So then we're going to move over here. Remember, we've got this 3 actions, and we do have a +1, and we've got a +1 combat power. Oh, this turn, yes. So, what we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 action to go up to a 2, and then we're going to spend... an action to do an attack. So we've got... my mistake. This goes away at the end of the turn. I should have done that. And you redraw. So this does change regularly. Alright, so I drew a 4. This is a pretty weak one. We might actually be able to defeat this. So I got a D6 +2 to defeat this guy. And we roll. And I rolled a 1. Amazing. So I fail. And when you fail, you have to take 1 loss normally, but because I'm in a red zone, I have to take 2 losses. And then there's this little loss table. You either lower the speed or combat track by 2, or lower both tracks by 1, or retreat 1 space. I think I'm going to retreat 1 space, because that's so bad. But I will try to attack again, because I've got my last action. And I rolled a 5. Cool. Which, I shouldn't have done that, because that does nothing for me. I still can't advance because I'm out of actions. And this is me being stupid. So in that instance, instead of attacking, you would just maybe spend an action to do something like that. But this is what I'm talking about. This is so punishing that at the beginning of the game, you're going to sit here in Taku, and you're going to spend as many actions as possible to get yourself up maxed on both of these. And you'll be halfway through the deck by the time that's done. And you've got to be clinging on. And then it is... race as fast as you can, this absolute sprint at the end. And it's a really cool mechanic, but you cannot do this piecemeal. You will fail every time, and you will just sit here and make no progress. You've got to get these buffs up as strongly as possible, and then make this mad dash into Peking. And it's really cute, it's really dramatic, it's nice, but it's one of those things that it took me 2 games to figure out, of like, you cannot do this piecemeal. You will lose. Because you might survive here, but they will never get far enough if they're not extremely high on these combat modifier and advanced modifier tracks. You just won't do it. So, let's do another turn here real quick, just so that we can kind of see some of the melee here and what that looks like. Oh, cool. This event sucks. So all of our tracks are filled, so we don't add anyone. German envoy... Cataleya is murdered in Peking. So, eliminate 1 German CP if available. Yes, we're going to eliminate a CP. All Boxer units will advance 2 spaces during this turn instead of 1. So, what that tells you is this guy's at the wall, he's going to move 2, and we're going to lose the game if we don't eliminate this guy and this guy. This guy will get into the streets. If that's the case, not the end of the world. So... we have to eliminate these 2, and we've got 3 actions to do it. So, let's look at this. We're gonna do a melee here, and that melee is gonna look like a single die roll, and we're both gonna take this amount of casualties. So we're gonna roll a 6. Of course we are. I hate this so much. So this guy's got 5 strength, and we're gonna do 6 plus 1 Chinese melee casualty, 7. And plus 1 casualty from the boxer, 8. And so we're going to do 8. Okay, cool. And then we take this same amount of losses. We're going to take 6, 7, but we're going to take -1 because we killed them, and -1 here. So we're going to take 5 losses. And we're the Germans, so we've got 3 combat strength. So we'll be totally eliminated. But this is why we have this 4. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're still alive. This is why you build up your fortifications. This is your walls and your barricades. And this prevents you from taking all of those losses. He's dead. Good job. Now we have to do the same thing on this guy here. And we're gonna roll a die for our melee. I hate myself once again. So he's going to be eliminated. Good job. But we're going to take 6 minus 2. So we're down to a 4. Plus 1 for this guy. Minus 1 for this guy is a wash. Plus 1 legation melee casualty. I guess the Russians weren't good in melee. So we're going to take 5 losses. And we got the Russians. Luckily we're up to 7. But we don't have any buffer anymore. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that stings. Right? These melee rolls are just absolutely brutal, but you have to make them. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So we did, that was 2 actions. We eliminated the 2 guys that were going to make us auto lose, which is good. That's something. So then we'll take an action to try and fight this melee as well. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I will. Yeah, I'll do it. Of course I rolled a 5. Cool, so they're going to be eliminated as well. And we're going to take minus 2, minus 1. So we're minus 3 casualties. So we're going to take 5 minus 3 is 2. We're going to take 2. And you have to spread them evenly between both of these. So we have to take 1 English and 1 United States. And because both of these are now at 0, these guys are removed from the board. There are some events that can restore those units. But now we have only 4 defenders instead of 6. The game starts with 8. Now that we've done that, we can rearrange units because, this is hairy. If some guy appears, he's just going to run in. So because this is unengaged, there's no one in melee, we could move him over there. There's no one in melee here, we can move one of them over there. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move this guy, the Austrian, over here. And that's what we're going to do. So now we've got 1 guy on each wall. It's better than nothing. And then we move over here, and we're gonna do our kind of attacks here. But this is the game. It's everything's falling apart. You're desperately trying to keep your fortifications up and do enough melees and try and not die. You're actually trying to roll low, but have good modifiers so that you take no losses and they take a bunch. It's difficult, but you're trying to roll kind of in the middle of your die. 3 or a 4 is usually good because you can get a +1 to eliminate them if they've got 5, and you take like -2 or 3, so you're taking like 1 loss. But it's a balancing action. It's it's dice rolling in the end. But once again, this is the extremely important side of it. But I have a blast playing this. What we'll do is I'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So that's how this game works. Again, if you've played States of Siege, you kind of know what you're going to get yourself into in this one. It is extremely punishing. As you would expect. I think my first game of this, I literally lost 5 cards in. And that's because I wasn't 100% confident on, not the victory conditions, but like the capabilities of the Boxer units. And so like they like all kind of rushed in, and I was like, oh, I kind of thought I'd have a bit more time to stop them or fend them off, and so I just kind of got bum rushed in the first game, and it was more of just like, oh, I like just like misplayed this entirely because I didn't really understand what I was trying to do in that sense. Another thing that I really like about this one is because it's set in 1900. And it's China, the weapons that were being used at the time weren't necessarily the most advanced on all sides, like compared to modern day. And so when you're rolling at long range and at extreme range, it's very difficult to do anything effective. Now, when you do, it can be really, really good. But you have to roll to hit, and at extreme range you take a penalty on that roll to hit. And usually you're going up against a 5 or a 6, so it's very hard to hit. And then when you hit, then you have to do a casualties roll, which if you roll a 1 on that, you're like, oh, I spent all that time to like do nothing, basically. And so really, like in a siege, this is a game where those guys are getting in, and you're getting into the melee. They're trying to climb the walls, breach the gates, and so... As such, the timing is very tense, because wasting your actions shooting at extreme range is just that. It is an absolute waste. Don't do it. But so it's this game of you're waiting for them to get close, but you have to eliminate them, because if you don't, they'll all charge through, and they'll be in the streets, and they'll be in the fort, and it'll be over real quick. So it's extremely tense from that standpoint. And then the other element of the tension is you'll start with 8 guys, and they're all like pretty decent strength and have all these good capabilities. But when you do like melee attacks, which is, you will do melee attacks more than range attacks in this one, straight up. And when you do the melee attack, it auto hits. You don't have to roll to hit, but you roll a die, and that's how many casualties both sides take as a base number. So you're like, oh sweet, I rolled a 6. I totally eliminated them. And you're like, oh no, I have to take 6 losses. Now, that's going to be reduced by the wars, and maybe you've got a reduction because of the Japanese unit, and maybe because they were eliminated, it gives you another -1. So you might only be taking 3 losses, but 3 losses divided by your 2 guys, 1 guy's going to take 2, 1 guy's going to take 1. All of a sudden, after 2 or 3 melees, your guys are like almost dead. And this game is more than 3 melees long, let me tell you that. And so you're playing this game of, can you get your best units here and there to maximize casualties on a bad casualty roll? You're like, I want to roll a 2, but I'm +1 from my British unit, and I'm +1 from my Austrian unit. Cool. They're going to take 4 losses. I'm going to take 2. Oh, I'm behind, the Western Wall, which is -2 to me. Great. I don't take any losses. So you're not necessarily always trying to roll extremely high because you take those same losses. And it reminds me of, in a slightly different way, it reminds me of an attrition of souls from Compass Games, where you roll a set of dice and those results apply to both sides. Depending on your force composition, that's how they're going to be interpreted. But I really enjoy that you roll a die and you're like, oh sweet, I totally eliminated them. And you're like, oh no, I eliminated myself. And then you like roll a 1, you're like, cool, I didn't do anything, but I also didn't die. But that doesn't help my tactical situation. It's a very, very neat interplay between that, and I really like that aspect of it too. The other major part of this is the relief column map, and that is, I think I grossly misplayed it in the plays that I've done so far, and I think I finally kind of figured out more of what I need to do. But the relief column map, I will tell you, is extremely hard, and really, the game hinges on, because you have to get the relief column to peaking. If you don't, it doesn't matter what else happens, you will lose the game. So the real game is like there. These guys are just trying to hang on for dear life, and you can make that work, but the relief column has to get there. But you have to set it up, because the relief column dice rolls are extremely punishing, extremely difficult, and you do not get many of them. So what you have to do is you have to spend like the first third of the game basically setting up your modifiers. So you've got max modifiers for advancing and for attacking, and then you start to kind of break through and make that progress. And all the while you've got this blocking force that you have to overcome. And so I was doing, I'd get like a +1 and then I'd roll to attack, and then I would lose because +1's not very good. And then I would just lose all the actions I put in to get that bonus. And so what you need to do is, don't bother attacking for the first third of the game. Just invest in your modifiers. You'll take an attack or 2, it's not the end of the world, but you'll get those maxed, basically. And then you make the mad dash for peaking. And hopefully you've got enough time left, basically. Because it's so difficult. The rolls are like to advance, you have to roll more than a 6. I believe it was more than a 6. And so you're rolling a d6. So you have to get to your +3 modifiers for it to even be a 50-50 to advance. And you can't advance until you've eliminated the blocking force in front of you and dispersed them. So you have to succeed at that, and then you can advance. And so if you don't have a good combat modifier, you're going to roll and you're going to lose, and then you can't advance, even though you might have a really good advance modifier. You physically can't make the advance roll because there's a blocking force in the way. So you've got to get a really good combat modifier to ensure that you succeed at that, And then you do your advance roll and make sure you succeed at that. It's no good failing one of those rolls, because every time you fail an advance or a combat roll, your modifiers shrink. You take losses. And it's just, you've got to get maxed, and you've got to make all those rolls, and it's brutal. It's really, really difficult, that part of it. So you got to invest that time, the siege is going to wear on, and then you make that race to get there at the end, which thematically is very, very nice. I really enjoyed that part of it. But just understand that if you try to piecemeal your way through the relief column, you'll never get there. You'll never make any progress. Unless you somehow miraculously rolling all sixes, which I do not do, famously so. I rolled like no successes on that table in any of the plays that I've done. I think in a grand total of all the times I've played, I've made like 2 successful advance rolls. And I've lost every time I've played this game. So maybe don't take any advice from me, because I don't know what I'm doing. But that's the only way that I see that you could be successful at it, having never been successful myself. So once again, maybe a grain of salt there. But all in all, I had a blast with this. I enjoy States of Siege. I think they're really good solitaire games because they're not massive. Now this is admittedly that they're bigger than the original Victory Point Games ones. They came in this little small little pizza box, and it was, I think Zulu's on the Ramparts is like, it's real small, almost like half the size of this map, maybe even smaller than that. And little small pieces, so it was very transportable, and you could take it on with you on a business trip or on vacation. These are getting, boxes a little bit bigger, it's a little bit nicer. And the board's a little bit bigger, a little bit nicer, which is, doesn't bother me. I play these at home, generally speaking, but they're really nice solitaire games because they play in under an hour. It's not a ton of pieces. The new game, little trays inside, nice to keep everything organized, but it's not a ton of sprawl. You can put it out on like a little hotel table. You got enough space for that kind of thing. You can take it anywhere with you if you were so inclined, but it's such a great opportunity to engage with a piece of history that I literally knew nothing about. Nothing. And so that's the thing that I appreciate the most about States of Siege, I think, is that I know, some of the games I'm like, oh, I know something about this. And it's a great way to like learn more. This, I didn't know what the Boxer Rebellion was. Apparently there's a Charlton Heston movie about it, I think. So one of you guys pointed that out to me last time, so at some point I'll have to dig that out and give that a watch. But this was a new piece of history to me. It was a very interesting piece of history to me because you've got these nationalist Chinese forces trying to expel imperialists who are occupying China, and the Empress declares war on them, and they got all these forces trying to get them out. It's just a really interesting situation, and one that it is not taught in any of the schools that I went to, and it's probably fairly glossed over in the Western world. But it's such an, I don't know, I really, really liked the opportunity to engage with this history and to learn about it, both from kind of a larger scale, from the cards that kind of, talk about some of the decrees and some of the public opinion, to almost some of the micro scale, where it's like, I've got this set of, these guys on this wall defending against this tiny siege, and they've got like a cannon at the gates. Like, you get down into that level and to some of the higher level stuff in an abstract way. And I just think it's a great opportunity to learn and engage. And that's part of the reason I like wargaming, is because you get a little bit more than some of the drier board games out there where you're changing resources into different resources to get points. Here, there's a human element to it. There's some, moral and political elements to it, and some historical elements to it that are always fascinating to think about and to ponder on, and to maybe go and read a book and learn a bit more on as well. So, keep up the fire, the Boxer Rebellion from Worthington. I had a great time with this. Extremely punishing, and a great opportunity to learn a piece of history. If you're interested, check it out. I believe they're available on that website. This just came fresh off the Kickstarter a while back. So, appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.